runes and gold-colored ink and a calligraphy pen to draw the runes onto these stones that can be commonly found in garden centers. I still think that it's nice, if you're gonna do this for yourself, to pick nice stones, because old people and people even now used to say beauty is the human way to get close to the divine. And I also think that when things are pleasing to the eye and you feel pride of how you made it and the kind of positive feelings that they give you, then they're more meaningful for your purpose. I like to use runes for several different purposes. First, as you can see from this very simple porcelain cup, that I wrote runes here using the same ink. I have these wooden ice cream sticks inscribed with runes that you can see over here. Every day I ask, what does today hold for me? Or what intention should I set for today? And pull out a stick. The nice thing about runes is that all of them contain positive meanings. So when you ask positive, intentional questions, this one that looks like a M is called Iwas. Iwas stands for the horse, and you can see the letter kind of looks like a horse standing on its four legs, completely on the side, so you can only see two of them. I'm a very visual person, so this is how I like to memorize the runes. Although when they made it, they might have been thinking of these images too, who knows? But yes, the Iwa stands for the horse, and therefore it stands for travel and transportation. And because the Nords depended on horses so much for not just transportation but for companionship during travels and food when they needed it, it also stands for trust and loyalty as well as teamwork. And like most symbols that stand for transportation, Iwas also stands for change. It's a very powerful rune. The next one that I wanted to go over is Uruz. Uruz is my husband's favorite rune, and that is because it stands for the ox. The ox is actually his Chinese zodiac sign. Just like the ox, it stands for strength, particularly physical strength. Very interestingly, it also stands for untapped potential that can be hard to manage. It's definitely a rune stone that was very treasured by the warriors, and they would carry it as a talisman, usually in their valued belongings, or engrave it to their swords. This guy is Genas. Genas stands for the torch, which I guess it kind of looks like a bent torch over here. And it is a very important rune connected to divination, because fire in many cultures is often linked to a way to reach the gods. So, over here, Gena stands for vision, revelations, as well as abilities in general, but particularly abilities used to create things. This one over here is Tiwas. It looks kind of similar to our T in the English alphabet. Tiwas, as the upward arrow symbolizes, stands for justice. It also stands for leadership, and is an important rune that was carried by Viking chieftains and kings. This one is called Lagus. Lagus, just like the root word for aqua, stands for water. Water is often linked in spiritual realms with dreams and fantasies, and just like that, Lagus is connected to, well, dreams and fantasies. Because water cleanses and bathes you and helps you born anew, it also stands for renewal. And this guy is called Rido, exactly like our alphabet R. Rido, just like ride, stands for a chariot. It has a very similar meaning as Awas and stands for travel, journeying, and So when I learned that ingwas held the meaning specifically for male fertility, I was actually quite surprised. But it also stands for gestation, again symbolizing the womb, and growth and development, particular growth of the mind and spirit. This one over here is a very beautiful symbol, and it is known as Jira. Jira for me reminds me of two arms intertwining, and it therefore symbolizes peace, and also symbolizes harvest, because you need multiple people working together to have a fertile harvest. And because it's associated with harvest, it also stands for prosperity. And just like harvest need the seasons of the year, this stands for a year as well. It's very interesting how the meanings of the runes are so intertwined with our current cultural and historical beliefs, right? And this one is Berkano. Looks like our alphabet B. Berkano stands for birth and new beginnings. It also stands for fertility as well. This one over here is actually an X, and it stands for Jibo. Jibo means exchanges, and when I look at it, it reminds me, I wish I could show you of a merchant doing the cross arm sign to show their camaraderie. Those who are familiar with Viking cultures know what I'm talking about. And promises and deals. Anyway, Jibo stands therefore for contracts and partnerships. It also stands for relationships in general. And because all relationships and partnerships require sacrifice from both parties, it stands for sacrifice as well. This one is a very powerful rune. It stands for the sun and is called Sowilo. As you know, Germans and the Vikings did not have good fortunes regarding receiving a lot of sun because of their primarily Nordic location. Therefore, the sun held particular significance for them. The sun, or Sowilo, therefore stands for goals that have been manifested. It stands for power and success. And this one right over here, it's really important to hold it the right way with the stick going upwards. It's called Naughties or Naughties. Actually, I don't know the exact pronunciation of this one. For any of you who know how this is pronounced, kindly let me know. But Naughties stands for self-reliance. For me, this looks like a spear, so that makes sense. And because it stands for self-reliance, it also stands for survival, particular survival instincts, endurance, and the desire to fulfill one's needs. And this one is called Othala. Othala was a very important rune integrated into many family usages and heirlooms because it literally stands for ancestors, heritage, the land in which you were born in, and sometimes it can symbolize the physical heirloom itself. this one, which is I think just a visually beautiful rune, is called Teresa's. Teresa's is a thorn. You can see it looks like the stem of a rose and its thorn over here. It is known, therefore, as a defense, and also can symbolize protection as well. Invertedly, it can also symbolize conflict. This one over here looks like a tree if you use your imagination a little bit, and actually stands for the yew tree, pronounced Iwas. Like the yew tree, it stands for strength, and not physical strength per se, but strength that comes from the inside, and being reliable, and is an important symbol to symbolize trustworthiness. This one over here that we just talked about is of course Wunjo, and my rune for the day. And this one that for me looks like an ice pick, stands for the alphabet I as well, is Isa, or ice. Like I said, the Nordics did not have their best luck with weather, and ice did not mean positive things for them for the most part. So it stands for challenge, and being frustrated at the challenge, and also being blocked mentally. When I am trying to predict my day, or what my intention should be, I actually like to imbue a positive meaning to this and say, oh, I should be focusing on being more patient and more forgiving to myself and others today, because life can have challenges and frustration, but it doesn't mean that I can't use it as an opportunity to learn and grow. And this one over here is manas. For me, it again looks like a fence, which is of course a creation by man in order to defend ourselves, to protect civilizations. And therefore, mana stands for social order. It also stands for enemies, but in particular, shielding oneself from their enemies. It stands for the self, and of course, respecting and realizing the self. We're almost there, friends. And over here, which looks very similar to manas, the main difference is that manas has two sticks sticking out on the either end, and this one does not. This one is dagas. Daga stands for the dawn. Therefore, it stands for new beginnings, in particular, starting a new business. Spiritually, it stands for a new awakening, or having some sort of an epiphany, or a mental breakthrough. And over here we have, I'm holding it the wrong way, Perthrow. Perthrow is a dye cup, and therefore it should actually be like this, but this is how it's written in red. Because the cup is mysterious and it hides things that are in the cup. It stood for magical and occult abilities, secrets, issues that remain mysterious. And of course, last but not least, we have the beautiful Ansus. Ansus is actually very meaningful that I pulled out Ansus last. And therefore, foresight, vision into the future, and was a god that was very wise and had many qualities that Vikings looked up to in particular. Ansus therefore stands for insight, foresight into the future, communication, and inspiration. I hope it's focusing for you guys so you guys can see the letter clearly. So now that we know the runes, we are ready to create our talismans. For this one, you don't need a lot of things. You really just need your calligraphy pen, or even just a Sharpie pen. Although to make the experience feel more ritualistic and special, I do recommend getting a calligraphy pen even from your local dollar store. I know it's hard to go out right now, so you can order it online as well. Or, like I said, you can always use a Sharpie pen. Although I will warn you that Sharpie pen inks for some reason can be hard to use on certain rocks. The more important thing is that you use an ink that cannot be erased with water or touch very easily. So to create our talisman for today, I have rose quartz for myself, which stands for love, in particular self-love, and being generous and forgiving to oneself. And the rough aventurine, which is going to be for my husband, which stands for luck and abundance, wealth, and it's also a very important healing stone, which my husband considers to be a very important thing in his life. I'm gonna start with my husband's rune. When you're creating a talisman for yourself, it is very important to visualize your intentions and really focus on it, to imbue it with meaning. In fact, when we created these runes, we held the runes one by one, called it by its name, and read out its readings to imbue it with meaning and symbolize that it is for use in our family and express our gratitude towards each of the meanings that were given unto them by all the thousands of people that have used them over the course of human history. So let's start. Like I have mentioned, and I know we went through a lot of runes, my husband's favorite rune is Urus, which is a wild ox, untamed potential. So I'm going to write that out right now and imbue it with meaning. So, as you can see, I wrote the rune a little bit off the side, so that when he meditates with it, he has space to hold that's beside the rune. Especially when you're using calligraphy ink, that's a good idea to do, so there's less chance of you rubbing off the rune with your finger oils. You can, of course, engrave it onto the stone, but I personally don't have the skills to do it. And for my talisman, I'm going to use the rune Fehu, my favorite, which stands for foresight, creativity, abundance, and luck. And I'm going to put it on this rose quartz to give me with self-love as well. This one was a little more challenging because the rock is not smooth, but I still thought that it was a wonderful piece of a rose quartz that's rough and not so polished, just like how they should be. But of course you can use a polished stone as well, but for this talisman I just wanted to do something that was more closer to Mother Earth and a little further away from the human touch. So these are my talisman that I created for myself and my husband. And that concludes our video for today. I hope you learned a little bit about runes, their meanings, and their historical significance. And I urge you to give a try on making them yourself, creating divination sticks, or even creating talismans. It doesn't have to be on gemstones. It can be on a piece of paper as well. Anything that you can carry around with you in your person. Whatever makes you feel more positive